Hey, what's up guys? Spencer Rhodes here. So this is kind of a hypothetical video about Rosita. For those of you that don't know, I personally believe that Rosita and Ezekiel will not survive season 9 of The Walking Dead. There's this big part of the comics that's coming up that I'm sure that the show is going to adapt, where the Whisperers, the new villains, these are the villains that killed Jesus last episode. They kill 12 characters in the comics and decapitate them and put their heads on sticks to mark a border to represent where the other characters can't cross to their territory. And of course, it devastates the survivors, and it starts a war between the Whisperers and the characters that weren't killed. And there's the 12 heads, and it's a very, very big moment. And the two biggest characters that are killed and their heads are put on spikes are Ezekiel and Rosita. Those are the two big characters. And I personally believe that it will, again, be Ezekiel and Rosita in the TV show. Now, I know that the TV show has a history of remixing things, but I don't know that this will be one of those things that they remix. They'll remix some of the deaths. I'm hoping that it's 12 heads, for one thing. I'm hoping they don't chicken out and make it like 6 heads or something. I hope it's 12 heads. There's enough characters. There's enough background characters. There's really no reason for it to not be 12 heads unless they really want a body count in season 10, which they might. I don't know. But as far as the two big ones, it'll probably be like 2 or 3 main cast members, and then, you know, some recurring characters and some very minor background characters we've only seen 4 or 5 times, you know, just a mixture. As far as the main cast members go, it'll probably be 2 or 3. And I think it will be Rosita and Ezekiel. Rosita and Ezekiel, they're both kind of happy right now. I mean, Rosita's not really happy right now because she had just ran away from the Whisperers and she's in the infirmary and she's injured. But she's been happy. I mean, she's in a relationship with Father Gabriel, and she's happy. Some people are saying that she could be cheating on him. I don't know. But it seems to me like she was in a relationship with Father Gabriel, and she was happy. And, you know, she's not really, you know, angry or self-destructive like she was in season 7. She was kind of self-destructive in season 7. She was going up to Sasha and was like, "Hey, Sasha, come with me on the suicidal mission since you slept with Abraham and I'm mad at you. Let's go on this suicidal mission. Unless you're chicken shit." And of course, like, Sasha doesn't really want to do it, but she does it because she's worried about Rosita. Then later on, Sasha sacrifices herself and gets killed, or you know, commits suicide. And I kind of feel like, well, if Rosita hadn't gone up to Sasha and said all those things, Sasha would still be alive. And, you know, Rosita shooting Negan's bat, that led to Olivia's death. So if it wasn't for Rosita's actions and her being so angry and self-destructive, there's a fair chance that Olivia and Sasha would still be alive. So like I said, she was just kind of angry in season 7. She had a dark story arc. And in season 8, she started to see the error of her ways and calm down. And that was during the actual war. Like, she was one of the more chill characters in season 8. And that was the actual war, like the actual fighting and killing of the saviors and attempted killing of Negan. And she was chill, and she kept a cool head, and she was always doing the right thing. And she didn't really have a big issue with Negan being locked up. So it seemed like you could argue that maybe her story arc was complete. You know, she had found her true self. She had gone over her anger problems. She's doing okay. You know, maybe it's time for her to get her comic death, since this is where she dies in the comics. Similar to Ezekiel, I feel like Ezekiel's story could arguably be considered over and having come full circle. He had lost Shiva. He had lost most of his soldiers. And he was a broken man, but he found himself again, and he found the will to fight again, and then he succeeded, and they won the war, and they made the casualties worth it, and they locked up Negan, and you know, Ezekiel pretty much has a son in Henry, and he's also married to Carol now. He's happy, and he's married to Carol, and you know, his optimism has kind of shined on Carol. Because there's a part in the first half of season 9 where Carol tells Ezekiel something that Ezekiel would normally say, and Ezekiel grins because Carol's acting like him. You could argue that Ezekiel's story is over. His story arc has come full circle, and it's time for him to die. They could both get their deaths in the comics, since this is where they die in the comics. if they follow the comics, Ezekiel and Rosita will die in the back half of season 9. We're getting the heads on spikes. I can guarantee we're getting the heads on spikes. And I think Rosita and Ezekiel will get their comic deaths and get the heads on spikes. However, there's a chance that they could remix it. There's a chance that they could change it. I mean, they could. I'm not saying they can't. If they wanted to, they could. Really, it just comes down to... I don't want to sound too factual about Rosita and Ezekiel dying. I have a reason for why I'm sticking with it. And that reason is I remember how much I loved Abraham, and I really, really liked Glenn. And I thought, there's no way they're going to die like they die in the comics. And then they die like they do in the comics. And I'm like, well, the characters are so much better. The actors are so much better. You know, the actors make Glenn and Abraham more important than they are in the comics. They're bigger characters. They should live longer than their comic deaths. And then they pretty much get their comic deaths. And the only difference is Abraham lives 5 minutes longer than he does in the comics. Big whoop. It's pretty much the same thing. Negan basically causes the deaths of Glenn and Abraham, and it scars Rick, and Glenn and Abraham die pretty much right before March to War and All Out War. And the TV show, same thing. Rick is scarred about Glenn and Abraham's death. They die right before March to War and All Out War. It's the same thing. Abraham just lives 5 minutes later. Big deal. It's pretty much the same thing as the comics, you know, and I really thought at least one of them would make it to March to War and All Out War. At least one of them would live past their comic deaths, and neither of them do. It's really the same thing in the comics and the TV show, and I don't want to be burned again like that. I'm just expecting Rosita and Ezekiel to die like they die in the comics. That way, if I'm wrong, it's like a happy surprise, but if I'm right, I'm prepared for it. I don't want to make that mistake that I made with Glenn and Abraham. I'm expecting Rosita and Ezekiel to die in the back half of season 9 because they followed the comics with Glenn and Abraham. I'm worried that they're going to follow the comics with Ezekiel and Rosita, and I don't want it to just just throw me to the floor like it did with Glenn and Abraham. So I'm just sort of sticking with that. If I want to be wrong, I want to be pleasantly surprised. At least one of them surviving their comic death would be cool. So with Rosita, hypothetically, if she survives her comic death, well, for one thing, I don't know if the Heads on Spikes is going to be the last episode of season 9. It could be episode 13, it could be episode 14, it could be episode 15, 16. Now, if this was Scott Gimple, we wouldn't get the Heads on Spikes in the finale of season 9. The finale of season 9 would be like the Heads on Spikes have happened, but we just see Michonne and she makes this gasp face and she's shocked. And then in season 10, the first 5 episodes would be flashbacks and we just like slowly see like Michonne finding out the Heads on Spikes. And then we'd see the Heads on Spikes because that's Scott Gimple's style. But this is Angela Kang writing the show. So not only are we going to get the Heads on Spikes, we're not going to get any bullshit. You know, we're going to get the Heads on Spikes, but we might not even have to wait until the last episode. It could be like episode 15 or something. So, for one thing, if Rosita survives the Heads on Spikes, she definitely needs to survive season 9. She better. She better survive season 9. I don't want them to do what they did with Abraham, where you're like, oh shit, this character survived their comic death, I'm so excited, and then 5 minutes later they die anyway. If Rosita survives her comic death, I want it to be a big deal. I want it to be something that really matters and really impacts what they do with her character. I don't want it to be slightly different and she lives slightly longer than her comic death. So if she survives season 9, I would say she at least needs to make it to season 10, episode 8. She at least needs to make it to that far. She at least needs to live that much longer. Otherwise, just give her comic death. What's the point of her living 5 minutes longer? You know, you might as well give her comic death. So if she's going to survive her comic death, it needs to really matter. They need to really have her character live longer, and at least she can die in season 10. But at least I'd say give her at least the first half. Give her at least until episode 8. If you want her to be the big mid-season finale death, which they sometimes do, that's fine. But she needs to at least make it to like the middle of season 10. It needs to be a difference. It needs to feel like she really did live longer than her comic death. Not 5 minutes longer. You know? But yeah. It would be so cool if Rosita survives season 9. That's her what? That's her 6th year? If she makes it to season 10, that's her 7th year. How many characters make it to their 7th year in a row? Like, goddamn, that's badass. I would be so happy with Christian Serratos. She deserves it. She is just a badass, amazing actress. Literally one of the most beautiful looking women on the planet. And she actually is like a badass, and she's a strong actress. And I love Rosita. I mean, Rosita's so much better in the TV show than she is in the comics. Like, no one even remembers her in the comics. She's so one note. She's basically a plot device for Abraham and Eugene. She's basically a plot device for Abraham and Eugene. She never got a lot of lines. She never had a lot of big moments. She wasn't that important. She was kind of a bitch. She wasn't really likable. She was just kind of sucked in the comics and wasn't a big character. Whereas in the TV show, she's obviously a big character, and she's more likable. And Christian Serratos has just brought so many layers to this character, and I love the character's attitude and personality and her dialogue. Even her dark story arc in season 7, I can appreciate because I believed it. You know, I believed her character, you know, go into that dark place for a little while. I love Rosita, and I love Christian Serratos and her performance, and I will be so happy and excited if she survives her comic death. That would be great. But like I said, it better be more than 5 minutes longer. I don't want it to be like Abraham, where it's 5 minutes longer, and then she dies anyway. Hell no. She needs to make it to at least the middle of season 10. But yeah, I mean, Rosita in the Whisperer War, that would be awesome. Like Rosita, like in the Whisperer War, you know, fighting and playing a role in that. I mean, she could die in the Whisperer War. You have to have characters die in the Whisperer War. Imagine Rosita like going out like a warrior, not getting her head on a spike, just going out like a warrior. You know, fighting 10 Whisperers and going out like a soldier, like a badass. Maybe having this big dramatic moment where she like sacrifices herself or something. Like she like shoots like a rocket at like gasoline or something and like blows herself up and like blows up 100 Whisperers or something like that. That would be awesome. But it needs to at least be like the middle of season 10. Like I want her to actually live longer. Angela Kang, if you're watching this, if you're gonna have Rosita survive her comic death, don't do it like Abraham where it's just, oh, they die anyway 5 minutes later. I know characters have to die, but like she needs to live at least longer than 5 minutes later. But yeah, that would be so cool. I do feel like Rosita could definitely have a place in the Whisperer War. I mean, she would definitely fight in it. I mean, she's a soldier, she's a badass. She would definitely fight in the Whisperer War. And yeah, you could argue that with the absence of Rick, you know, the absence of Morgan, the absence of Dwight, they killed off Carl. You know, we don't know if we're going to get Maggie back or not. We don't know what's happening with Lauren Cohan's show, if it's going to get canceled by season 10, if the character's going to return. We don't know. So yeah, maybe we do need Rosita in the Whisperer War, you know? And Negan, I don't know what they're going to do with Negan. Are they going to kill off Negan? Are they going to have Negan get exiled and go MIA? You know, so it's like they are kind of running out of like major characters. So yeah, having Rosita being in the Whisperer War would make sense. And I would be very happy for the character and for the actress. So I hope they do it. But like I said, when I'm watching the back half of season 9, I'm just going to expect Rosita and Ezekiel to die. Because I don't want to be burned like Abraham and Glenn burned me, you know? So if they survive, if one of them survives, it'll be a pleasant surprise. But if they get their heads on spikes, I'm just going to kind of like, you know, just expect it and be interested in how they handle it, how it's written, how it's directed, how it's shot. Are there going to be animatronic heads? Are they going to, you know, look like the actors? Is it going to be like sad music? You know, are the devastating characters? Is it going to be like well acted, beautifully shot? You know, I do look forward to how they handle it. But yeah, right now I'm just expecting Rosita and Ezekiel to die in season 9. But if one of them doesn't, or if both of them don't, whatever, I will be surprised in a good way. I'll even like throw a party or something. So I like Rosita. I hope she survives her comic death. She's got my vote for sure. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't be shy. Hit that like and subscribe. I'm not going anywhere. I make 1 to 2 Walking Dead videos per day, so please hit that subscribe button. Right now we are at 326 subscribers. My goal is to try to get to 400 in the next few months. So just remember, every subscriber counts, every bit of support matters, and is very appreciated. We're at 326, so we're 74 away from that goal of 400. Hopefully we'll get there in the next few months. But yeah, anyway, with all that said, I am Spencer Rhodes, and I will see you guys later. Bye.